Well, hello everybody. This is Reverend Bradford Hole, author of By Grace Through Faith, Volume 2. And right now we're going to do the video introduction for Chapter 17, Biblical Stewardship. There's a man who had investments in the oil fields. One day he hit another gusher, and suddenly he was worth twice as much. A couple days later, a friend asked him, "What's it like to wake up one morning and have twice as much as you had the day before?" The oil man responded, "My assets haven't changed. I didn't own the first well, so I own the amount I had before, which is zero. I just feel added responsibility to God for managing my new asset. The only money we have is master's money. It is entrusted to us for management. Do we manage or do we own?" In this chapter, we're going to examine what it means to be a biblical steward. The concept in the New Testament that describes and defines what it means to be a servant before Christ is the word stewardship. Economics and ethical and emotional issues that surround it are frequently topics of the discussion in the front page news items. This is particularly true in an election year, when much of the debate focuses on economic issues. What we don't see initially is that other issues such as education, abortion, and other question of economics. Broadly understood, economics has to do not only with money or taxes or business, but with the management of the resources. That includes all resources, such as the resource of our unborn children, educational materials, and policies. In other words, how we use our resources is the subject of economics, and in a biblical sense is the chief concern of stewardship. Consider the verbal link between stewardship and economics. The English word economics and economy come from the Greek word oikonomia, which is made up of two parts. Okios, the word for house or household, and nomos, which is the word law. So okios, nomos together literally mean house law. Oikonomia is transliterated into English as economy. The English word that translates rather than transliterates the word oikonomia is the English word stewardship. So stewardship and economics are really closely related concepts, and in fact, to New Testament Christian, there was really no distinction between them. A steward in the ancient world was a person who was given the responsibility and authority to rule over the affairs of a household. For example, Patriarch Joseph became a steward over Potiphar's household. He managed everything in the household and was given the authority to rule over the house in Genesis 39, 1 through 6a. In that role, he was responsible to manage the household well. He was not to waste the resources of the family, but to make wise decisions. Yet the role of a steward was not something that just happened to emerge in the Greek system of management or something invented by the Egyptians at the time of Joseph. The steward's role derives it from a principle of stewardship which is rooted in the creation of mankind. Look at the foundations for stewardship found early in the chapters of Genesis. In Genesis 1:26 through 28, we read, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, over the earth, over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth.' So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female. And God blessed them, and he said to them, 'Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. You have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds, over the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth.'" On the first page of the Bible, we see that the creation of human beings made in the image of God, who revealed himself initially as the creator of all things, the subsequent call of his image bearers to imitate him in a certain way by being productive, human beings were commanded to be fruitful and multiply. This was a command for productivity, which has stewardship implications. Thus, the concern for stewardship is rooted really in creation. Sometimes we think that the New Testament is concerned with labor, industry, and productivity, but it is concerned only that we love one another and live by grace and not by works. But if we examine the parables and language of Jesus, we see an emphasis on his call to fruitfulness. Jesus calls his people to be fruitful not only in the multiplication of species through propagation, but for the kingdom's sake. This is an expansion of the creation ordinance that his people are to be productive. The second command given to Adam and Eve was to have dominion over the earth. God installed Adam and Eve as his vice regents, those who were to rule in his stead over all creation. It's not that God granted independent ownership of the plant to humankind. It remains his possession. But God called Adam and Eve to exercise authority over the animals, plants, seas, rivers, sky, and his environment. They were not to exercise authority like a reckless tyrant who had carte blanche to do anything he wants. No, for God didn't make Adam and Eve owners of the earth, he made them stewards of the earth, who were to act in his name and for his glory. Immediately after giving this mandate, God created a lush and gorgeous garden and placed Adam and Eve in it, Genesis 2:15. He commanded them to work it and to keep it. This command to work and keep it is the key to understanding the responsibility that is given to human beings, which goes with the privileged status of being made in God's image, being given dominion over the earth. At creation, that mandate is that God gave humanity what was for people to reflect and mirror God's stewardship over a sphere of creation. This involves far more than religious enterprises or the church. It has to do with how we engage in scientific endeavors, how we do business, how we treat each other, how we treat animals, how we treat the responsibility to exercise stewardship over our home by working and keeping it. Working and keeping one's home means preventing it from falling apart, keeping it orderly, maintaining it, preserving it, making it beautiful. The whole science of ecology is rooted and grounded in the principle God didn't say, from now on your food will fall out of heaven. He said, you are to work with me in being productive, dressing, tilling, planting, replenishing, and so on. The next commandment that was given to Adam and Eve in the garden was to name the animals in Genesis 2:19. In most elementary sense, this was the birth of science, learning to distinguish among species, kinds, forms, discerning the reality as we examine it. This is also part of our stewardship, learning about the place where we live, caring about it. These principles were not simply for one's own house, but the entire planet. Some of us are old enough to remember an astonishing achievement of the 20th century Americans. When the first astronauts were sent to the moon, invariably, part of that memory included an astronaut named Neil Armstrong. His first footsteps on the moon, where he spoke a giant step for mankind. One could look at that human achievement simply in terms of human arrogance, or we could see it as a fulfillment of the mandate that God gave us to have dominion over creation. Fundamentally, stewardship is about exercising our God-given dominion over his creation, reflecting the image of our Creator God in his care, responsibility, maintenance, protection, and beautification of his creation. So let's take a look at a word study here again from one of my friends, Rick Renner. Ephesians 5:16, he's a Greek scholar. Redeeming the time because the days are evil. This is interesting to me, that most successful wealthy investors and a homeless, penniless man on the street have one thing in common. Each only has 24 hours in a day. In this natural world, time has become the very essence of our life to a large degree. The way you use our time defines who we are in this natural world. Time is the very essence of our lives. To a large degree, the way we use our time defines who we are. Because that's true, the issue of how we utilize our time is supremely important. It's true because the way we utilize our money is a measuring rod of how we value in life. Although financial stewardship is important, the way we spend our time is even more important. For example, many wealthy moguls will ignore their families for weeks, months, even years, and then try to buy the affections of their loved ones with money and material wealth. This is rarely ever a successful undertaking, but it seems that no amount of money they spend or no amount of material wealth will cover this. This is rarely ever successful undertaking. It cannot compete with time. Love is spelled Time. Time is one of the most valuable resources. Money can be replaced. Financial shortfalls can be made up in the following quarter or fiscal year. Nothing can replace time. Once it's gone forever. The good news is that the Apostle Paul says, redeem the time. Ephesians 5:16. The word redeem is the Greek word agonizo, which means to buy back time. You may have lost time by merely wasting it or using it in things that aren't important, but the great story of redemption is your story isn't over. With God's help, things that were important, the story of redemption, with God's help, time can be redeemed. It can be bought back by personal carefulness, by stewarding what time remains. Today we live in an age of distractions. It's not that we're necessarily idle or lazy, but so many things vie for our time and attention that we can get distracted on important, essential things. For example, non-stop media entertainment, electronic gadgets fill our modern lives, constantly luring us away from truly important things of life. Part of the act of prioritizing is to identify these types of time wasters and eliminate them from our routine. It's not that we can't use, technology and things like this, but we need to put priorities. Seek first the kingdom of God, His righteousness. Spend time with family and work and all these different things. The ability to properly manage your time, establish sound and balanced priorities is most critical keys to experience a stable, fruitful life as a believer and a leader. So I encourage you today to prioritize your time by carefully identifying the things that are most essential to your life. Once you've determined your top priorities, focus on those areas and let those other less important pursuits fall into place beneath you. As you learn to use your time wisely, not squandering, but making the most of your life God has given it, you will find the most fulfillment He desires you to experience in every area of your life. Well, thank you. That's all for now, and we're going to see you in the next episode.